The imperfect part 2. Here I want to focus on when we use the imperfect. We use it to provide background information, set the stage, or express a condition. Okay, so actually, when we set the stage, there are a couple examples here. You might be referring to the weather, what the weather was like at that moment. Llovía mucho. It was raining a lot. Era una noche oscura y nublada. It was a dark and cloudy night. Okay, now for this one, that's really all you could say. For this one, you actually do have a choice of making it the preterite. First, this one, llovía mucho. It was raining a lot. And I mentioned in the first video that if you had something more specific, you could use the preterite. Llovió mucho anoche. It rained a lot last night. So very often, if you're a little bit more specific, just by adding this one word, you could say llovió. Okay, there's nothing wrong with it. But era una noche oscura y nublada. Okay, you don't have the option here to say fue. For this description, you can only say era. Right? So that's part of setting the stage. Background information. Estábamos en el segundo año de la universidad. So I'm telling you a funny story about me and my bros. Okay, and something goofy that we did in undergrad. We were in our second year of college. Okay, so I'm giving you some background information before I tell you more about the juicy part. Okay, so you would say something like estábamos en el segundo año de la universidad. Let's see, how would that work? Okay. Teníamos un examen esa semana. We had an exam that week. Okay, this is also background information. It's also imperfect. Okay, and something that we'll be learning shortly is combining the two, imperfect and preterite. Decidimos hacer algo ridículo. And then, now I'm getting to the juicy part. We decided to do something ridiculous. So this is a preterite. Okay. These two are imperfect. These give you some background information, and then finally I move into the main part of the story. And once there's an action, then I would use the preterite. Before that, I would use the imperfect, just setting up the story. Okay. Adriana estaba enferma y no quería levantarse. So, let's see, that's a condition that existed. Estaba enferma. But again, I'm saying she was sick, and I'm not saying specifically for what amount of time. So I could say something like, ella estuvo enferma durante una semana. More specific information, I would use the preterite. She was sick for a week. Okay. Now for these, also notice that these are not habitual. Okay. Notice that these are not translated as would or used to. Okay. It's these, the habitual ones, that are translated as would or used to. Okay. Or they could be translated that way. This could also be translated as went in English. Íbamos al centro comercial todos los viernes. So this is something that you would do very often. Nos divertíamos mucho. Cuando era pequeño, LeBron jugaba al básquetbol. Okay, so this is not used to be small, but maybe more like background. When he was small, and this one would be he would play or used to play, or just played. Okay, and then here you see it with a reflexive verb. Now, cuando is very often used with habitual actions. Okay, but it doesn't have to be imperfect. Something like this would be always imperfect. Cuando yo era niño, tenía muchos amigos. When I was a kid, I had or used to have a lot of friends. Okay. But you can use a preterite with cuando. Cuando fui a España el año pasado, vi una obra de teatro. When I went to Spain last year, I saw a play. Obra de teatro is play. Okay. Now here I have that a more specific indication of when something happened. But actually, you wouldn't even need that. Okay. When I went to Spain, because you're not saying when I used to go to Spain, when I was going to Spain, or something like that. You're just indicating that you went. You're indicating that it's a perfect action. It's a completed action. Okay. So don't think that this always means imperfect. You could have a preterite there. But it depends on what you're trying to say. Are you giving some background information? Are you saying that something was completed? Okay, think about that. These words very often are used for habitual and repeated actions. A menudo, casi siempre, frecuentemente, etc. Okay. The imperfect can express was or were, ing. We already saw some of this for was and were. Okay, and then ing is how we would translate it in English. Okay, we would add the ing there. Dormías, were you sleeping? Me duchaba cuando Juan llamó. There's cuando again. Okay. Me duchaba, I was showering when Juan called. Leía mientras escuchaba. Was reading while Alicia was listening. Okay. And so, actually, all these verbs could be predicate verbs um, in maybe the same situations, or when you're trying to express something a little bit different. Let's see. Dormías. This is what you might say to your roommate in your dorm. Were you sleeping? Okay. If you want to be mean and wake them up. Dormiste? This this is maybe if you're a kid and you go on a long drive, or maybe even a short drive, and your parent was wondering if you were knocked out during the drive. Dormiste? He looks at you. Your father looks at you and wonders if you fell asleep during the ride. Okay. So that simple question doesn't have to be imperfect. Okay. Um, and then actually that would be the only way to say that. Okay, but yeah, don't think that these verbs have to be the preterite. Me duché esta mañana. I took a shower this morning. Okay. This one is imperfect because something is happening and then there is an interruption, and that is the phone call. So again, we'll see this more later when we combine imperfect and preterite. Okay, we're going to have a whole section on that. And so this something is happening and then an action occurs. And in this example, we have two concurrent things that are going on. Okay, leía, escuchaba. And then to tell time in the past, when we talk about clock time, we use ser in the imperfect form. Okay, and era la una, eran las 10, but this would also work for something like la clase era era a las 10. Remember that this is not exactly like you're looking at your watch and you're saying it's 10 o'clock. You're saying that it is at a certain time. Whereas here, we're saying it was 1 o'clock, it was 10 o'clock. So if you want to say it was at 10, you would say like this: Era a las 10. Okay? And yeah, we'll look at more examples of how to combine imperfect and preterite in another chapter.